First of all, thanks for having me here. It's really a great pleasure for me. My greatest pleasure is to help people, is to help entrepreneurs, because I really think it's up to us. It's up to the small business owners and the entrepreneurs to save the country, and maybe to save the world. Now, I don't want to be too melodramatic, and you may or may not think that the country needs saving. But if you look at the global economic trends, we're in some trouble. And the trouble we're in is primarily because the people who have the most decision-making power have the least entrepreneurial values. But that's shifting. And what I mean by entrepreneurial values are, if you think about an entrepreneur, just to survive, you have to give more than you take. You have to provide more value to the customer than you get back in terms of money or other compensation, just to survive. Just to survive, an entrepreneur has to be prudent and spend your money and your time wisely. There's too many opportunities to waste time and waste money. You can't just solve problems that way. You have to solve problems actually through your own creative thinking and new ideas and by working together. So just, and the list goes on. So I believe in you guys. I believe in us as entrepreneurs. As more and more of us can be more and more successful, we'll be able to create jobs. We'll be able to create new ways of thinking. And I think that's actually going to be the force that turns the ship in the most positive direction. So it's for that reason that I'm really glad to be here. It's a privilege. So thank you. This morning, I thought we'd talk about strategy, and I've been really fortunate as was just said in the introduction. I've helped 7 companies reach $1 billion in sales, which is quite a accomplishment. I'm so gratified to have been with the kind of business leaders who were on that ride. And many of those companies, when I started working with the CEOs and the management teams, they were quite small. One of them had only 40 employees. One of them had 12 employees. So just to see that maturation process, it's astonishing, especially at the pace. This was happening over a course of 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. And seeing that, and then seeing a lot of companies that don't do that, I realized that when you begin with an idea, it's like a seed. And that seed is either like a crabapple seed or an acorn. And when you plant it in the ground, you're going to have very, very different results in terms of how big and large and strong and vast that will grow. And the difference between the crabapple seed and the acorn is the strategy. And so we're going to talk about, well, what have I learned by having now over 1,000 strategy meetings with some of the world's most strategic geniuses. And what I learned is that strategic genius or great strategy comes from adhering to some guidelines. It's actually, from the outside, when you see someone who's a real strategic genius at work, thinking about a business or thinking about how to solve a problem, it looks almost like magic. It looks like, a star NBA player or a star football player who just seems like they can just outmaneuver, run faster, and just be in the right place at the right time. How do they do that? But when you get inside their head, they're actually not smarter than you and me. They're not necessarily more creative than you and me. They just have a set of guidelines that they're following, and they apply those guidelines to every situation they see. So what we're going to do is I'm going to teach you what the guidelines are, and then we'll do a little bit of interaction where we'll apply some of them to your situation and see what we can come up with together. Does that sound fun? Okay, cool. As a premise for this talk, something that you're going to have to believe in order for this to work. is you're going to have to believe that what you think and how you think matters, and that it's up to you. So that what you think about and how you think actually determine what options you have available for you. They actually determine what you think and how you think determines how you feel about situations when they come up. So, for example, if you believe that the success that you've had so far is primarily due to luck, or due to your location, or due to something that was handed to you, if you believe that it was primarily an environmental factor that has made you successful, then when the environment changes and whatever advantage you've had so far turns into a disadvantage, when the environment changes, you're going to panic and think you're screwed. But if you think that primarily your success thus far has come from your own choices and your ability to respond to your environment, then when your environment changes, you might spend a day or two being, man, that sucks. That was a good run. But it's not the end of the world. You won't panic because you'll know that really it's up to you and you were the one that created your success. So are we all on board with that? Do you guys decide that what you think matters and that you're in charge of what you think? Can we start with that? Okay, cool. So the next thing is you win, which I think should be good news, if you were wondering. You win, and what I mean is every one of you is winning the aggregate game that you're playing. Every one of you is winning the aggregate game that you're playing. This is important because if you just try harder to play the game essentially that you're playing now, what follows is that you're going to get primarily the same results that you get now. And often when we think we're losing, or how many of you when you think about your businesses, you've got a goal in mind that you've had for, say, more than a year or two? How many? Cool. I appreciate the raising hands. It makes me feel like we're having a dialogue. It's awesome. It's just a favor to me. How many of you have had basically that same goal for 5 years or more? More than 3. Okay. Anyone have it for like 10 years or more? Okay, good. So when you've got a goal that you've had for a long time, 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, and you don't have it yet, you haven't achieved it yet, it can feel like you're not winning the game, right? Hey, again, just back to what I was saying about how your thinking drives what you feel. You could feel like, wow, I'm failing, or I'm winning, but only kind of, or I'm doing okay, but I still want to do more. But when we think that, you're actually only looking at a part of the picture. In other words, you're only looking at that one result outside of all of the other choices that you've been making. I don't know if you're familiar with the idea that we are made up of parts. Like if you've ever said, well, a part of me wants to go out, but a part of me wants to stay home. We have this idea of that we are actually made up of these parts. And one of the unique abilities that human beings seem to have is that we can create parts in ourselves, and then they can get in arguments with each other and then decide not to speak to one another, which is fascinating. So what that means is that if you identify into the part of you that really wants to succeed, even that part is made up of parts, because that part of you that wants to succeed also, part of you wants to succeed because you want to prove something. In other words, you want to succeed because you want to be thought of a certain way by other people. A part of you wants to succeed because you want to have things, like there's things you want to buy, there's a boat, there's a house, there's a picture in your mind of something that you can't afford now that you want to be able to afford, so you want to succeed so that you can afford that. That's part of you. Part of you wants to succeed because you care about other people, and you know that if you're more successful, you'll be able to do more good. You'll be able to help more people. Part of you wants to succeed because you care about your customers, and you believe that your business is providing something valuable to the customers. It's actually helping them. It's giving them something that's important, that they want. And if you're more successful, you'll be able to do that with more people. So as you start to identify all these different motivations and these different parts, it's like a committee. Add to that you have a committee member who wants to relax. You want things to be easy. You have a committee member that wants to have your marriage look a particular way and have time to travel. You have a committee member who wants time with your kids if you've got children. Or depending on your kids, maybe you don't want time with the kids. I don't know. I don't know your kids, but I'm assuming you want time with them. So when you take that whole committee, and what's the joke? Is it a mule or a donkey? That's a horse designed by a community. I can never remember, but it doesn't matter. When you take a committee and you get together in a meeting, I think Peter Drucker said that the IQ of the group in a meeting is about half of the IQ of the lowest member. Or said another way, none of us are as dumb as all of us. So you get together in a meeting, and without some kind of framework or guidance, you come up with a strategy, usually an unconscious strategy, to try and meet all those needs. And you are winning the game of that strategy now. That's important for two reasons. One is you have to be conscious of what those committee members are all wanting and what they're about, and you have to start to get into dialogue with them because they're probably not speaking to you, or you not to them. Particularly, some of them want things that you're ashamed of, which is okay. We won't have to talk in this group what those things are, but if you go into your secret heart of hearts, the voice that you only hear when you're alone, some of those things you want you're not that proud of. Either they feel selfish or whatever it may be. But those parts are important. They need to be heard by you. You need to be in dialogue with them. Because if you don't take into account everything that all the parts of you want, then you cannot build a strategy to win. That's one reason. The other reason it's important to know that you're already winning the game you're playing. You're absolutely winning the game you're playing. Is because it recategorizes you as someone who wins. And I've actually never met a person who isn't fully capable of winning at just about any strategy that they believe in. I've never met a person who's not fully capable of winning the strategy they fully, meaning all the committee members, believe in. So that's pretty cool. It allows me to believe in people. It allows me to believe in you even though we haven't met. It's happened so many times that I just can trust you. You know what I mean? So it's important for those two reasons. You guys getting the sense of the games that you've been winning that you didn't know you were playing? So you can actually be proud of that in a way. And it's also an opportunity for us to bring some leadership to a meeting, because when you get a bunch of people together, without leadership, you get the kind of meetings that we were talking about earlier, where you get 6 guys, a shovel, and no hole. But if you get a group of people together and you add some leadership, you add a vision, you add some structure, then you actually have the opportunity to create synergy, to create a greater outcome than any one of you could do alone. Have you guys had that experience at least once, where you've been on a team or in an environment where you've got some people working together, some people trying to do something together, and it was a greater outcome than you could have done just if you multiplied yourself? It's important to have at least one reference. Thank you. So that's cool about groups. Like here we have a group of people, and this could suck. Or with a little bit of leadership and vision, it could be way better than if it was just me or just you or just one-on-one or just two of us or just five of us. And the same thing goes for the committee in your head. If you bring a little bit of leadership to the committee in your head that has all these different views and all these different wants, you can come up with a strategy to really nail it, to really knock it out of the park. And that's what I hope we'll do today. The talk is the 5 aspects of strategic genius. My commitment is before you guys eat lunch, each one of you will be a strategic genius. So you can add that to the resume. And you will be, actually, because, again, strategy is applying guidelines and seeing patterns. Strategy is applying guidelines and seeing patterns. You are already expert pattern seers. It's how every human being learns to walk and learns to read. I'm almost certain that each one of you can read and spell better than I can. I'm horribly dyslexic, which meant that I was a very late reader. I was always getting the worst score possible in the reading category. So if you can read, which better than I can, which I'm sure you can, then you can see patterns. And if you can see patterns and you know the guidelines, then you'll be a strategic genius in no time. So as I said, I'm Bryan Franklin, and my commitment is to create a culture of contribution where we all care more about what we give than what we get. And I think entrepreneurs are the key to do that. Just a bit about my personal mission, what drives me, what my strategy is, what the vision is that I'm, when I talk to my committee, because there's a part of me that just wants to stay home with my beautiful wife all day and stare into her eyes. We've been married only a year, so you can picture what that's like. She's a phenomenal human, and by the way, normally I share the stage with her. She and I run our company together, and everything that I'm telling you, everything I think about this stuff, all the thoughts that I have, are the product of intimate conversation between my wife and I. She's also an entrepreneur. She's created 40 environmental breakthrough products, including a carbohydrate-based cancer treatment and an additive to inks and paints, which remove 90 to 100% of the harmful VOCs. So she came up through science into entrepreneurialism, and then now the two of us together teach and help entrepreneurs. That's just a shameless plug for the woman I love, so nothing there. So our dream is that when we ask any American, what does it take to succeed, that the obvious answer is to contribute or to give or to serve. So I just want you to think for yourself. If I say, what does it take to succeed, think about your answer. And then consider, instead of that answer, or if it's close to this one, just move it over slightly to succeed means that you contribute, that you help other people. And in fact, the way that I've succeeded is by helping the most successful people I could. In your business, obviously you need to help and you need to contribute to your customers, but you also might think about contributing or helping what you might think of as competitors. Now, it's current economic thinking that competition is the greatest driver of excellence, right? If you want to run faster, run against someone, right? That's the current thinking. Does that make sense? And that's true. We're not going to discredit that because it's obviously so. The difficulty is the context of that competition. And somewhere along the way, I think we lost our minds. We lost our hearts. Because somewhere along the way, to compete just started to mean to destroy. You know what I mean? To prevent. And in most professional sports contexts, most professional sports players, even though they're competing against the other team, and in the moment of the game, they have a kill mentality, right? They also know that they need to care for the other team. The other team needs to be healthy. Most players don't try to hurt each other. There are some that do, I know. Most players don't try to hurt each other because they know that the health of the sport is more important to their future than winning that game or not. Right? So the competition for winning is inside a context of collaboration. All of the NFL teams are collaborating to make the NFL successful. And after their rookie year, most players get that, and they're playing that way. And it's more and more true now that there's less team loyalty, and teams are, players are traded a lot, because you could be playing next to that guy next year. And knowing, wait a minute, this person I'm trying to kill is also next year the person I'm going to try and save. I think we could learn from that. I think in politics we could learn from that, and in business we could learn from that. The analogy is your competitors and you form a marketplace. You form collectively a brand that the customers interact with. For example, if I say doctors, that creates a certain feeling for you. Or if I say used car dealership, that creates a different feeling, usually. Well, I think the used car dealerships could get together and contribute to each other, help each other, create a better and better brand experience across the board, and it would be better for each individual car dealership. Now, still, I want to compete with you. I'm going to run against you. I'm going to play the game, but I'm going to not destroy you. I'm going to play the game in such a way that both you and I are more able to play tomorrow than we were today. So when you help partners, when you meet, you try and help the most powerful people you know, you try and help the most successful people you know, you try and always contribute, always give more than you take in every interaction, where you can create a culture of contribution where each person seeks to make the biggest difference, the biggest contribution in every action, interaction, and transaction. Once this occurs, that to me means that we'll tip as a culture, and we can start to really solve the big problems together, and that's what I'm excited about. So let's talk about strategy and tactics. Few things are more confusing to business people than the difference between strategy and tactics. It reminds me of, I got an email a couple years ago from a guy who said, hey, let's go over the general specifics. And then I was like, okay, what are the general specifics? And he said, well, we want to discuss the business strategy of calling people back right away. I'm like, okay, well, calling people back right away is not a business strategy, and there's no such thing as a general specific. So I don't have any idea what you're talking about, basically. Smart people, you'll go to Apple Computer, Microsoft, SAP, which is the largest software company in the world, and you ask the executive team, what's the difference between strategy and tactics, and they'll give you strange answers. So we're going to settle that one, and you guys will be in the top 1% of smartest people in the world on this topic. Tactics are the things you choose to do in order to win the game, and the strategy is the game you choose. What game are you playing? I think that strategy is a really, really important topic, because it defines not only how much success that you can have, but it really defines how easy that is for you. So how many of you have had to make really tough decisions in your business? You had to lay somebody off, or maybe you had to think about closing down a store, whatever it is. Really tough ones. I certainly have. I've had some doozies. I remember, a phone call where I had to call the best man at my wedding and tell him I'd lost $400,000 of his money in a bad investment where he invested in me, and then we blew it. And the question is, do we keep investing more and try and get it back, or do we cut bait? It's a tough decision. But tough decisions are the grandchildren of bad strategies. So you guys know the Donner Party? Have you heard of the Donner Party? This is a number of years ago out in the border between California and Nevada, and there's the Sierra Mountains out there. There's a place called the Donner Pass, and that's where this group of, you want to think like Old West days. They're traveling west, and they had to decide, they're running out of food, they had to decide, do we stay kind of in low ground and make do and then wait through the winter and then go next year, or do we just try and make it? And there they were in Donner Pass. They get stuck, they run out of food, and it was one of the only recorded instances of cannibalism in the United States where they had to eat their friends, right? So I'm imagining being the Donner Party and going like, do I starve to death or do I eat my friend? That's a really tough decision. So if you're making a tough decision, it's because 4 moves ago you made a bad strategy. Anytime you have a tough decision, it's because you had earlier than that a bad strategy. Because a good strategy positions you to be at the center of a system that requires you to be good at what you're naturally good at. Right? A good strategy doesn't require you to do things you hate to do. It doesn't require to do things you can't do. It doesn't require you to know things you can't know. A good strategy just relies on you doing what you're naturally good at and takes care of the rest, right? So I noticed, I've started a new business in the last 3 months with a partner named Morgan. And we have a product, it's a product idea we're launching in October. In fact, he just called, he says he's got 6 beta customers for the product. And the product is something that entrepreneurs really, really desperately want. Any entrepreneur who's using Facebook or Twitter or blog or any kind of content marketing. Any of you doing that, by the way? Okay, so I'll show you what I mean. Here's the product. We're going to email you a question. And the question is to get you thinking about something like that your customers might want to know for your blog. You're going to record for 5 minutes the audio of your answer. We're going to take that audio recording, that MP3, and we'll create your blog post, edit it, create visuals for it, email your list, let them know about it, build your email list around that, and handle all your social media for Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, and create YouTube videos driving targeted traffic to it, and create Kindle books, 99-cent one-chapter books, driving traffic through Amazon, through YouTube, and through social media. And the whole thing's $600 a month.